Je crois qu'il y a un arbre.
Alors bonjour à vous toutes.
Well, good afternoon to you all. To the audience organized by BPI France and to all those behind your screens. You can also ask questions. I'm very pleased to welcome you on this roundtable on the access for all. What role and ambitions for territories? This is an issue which it's on this very day, on September the 3rd last year, the subject of relocalization of companies, local territories are linked to that. So in a way, 1 year later, we are still news, and this is the central point of this roundtable. I'm going to introduce myself very briefly. Nathalie Croiset, I'm a journalist specialized in ecological transition. I've been working on these issues for 15 years, long before they've been commenting these issues in the media. So I do some podcasts for online media called Ecopo, E-K-O-P-O, so you can follow me online. So I'm going to introduce my experts, how to have available means to launch a project, how to being supported, and how to project yourself as an entrepreneur. So an introduction. After a quick introduction, I'll ask the audience online, both online and physically, to start asking questions, because this is the objective. So on my left, Frédéric Guibert, who is Director for Creation and Entrepreneurship with BPI France. What does that mean? These are really recent activities. Yes, indeed. So Frédéric Guibert, Director for Creation and Entrepreneurship. BPI France, it's a public bank for investment, which is a player around for small years with ancestors dating back to the World War II. So we support entrepreneurs in their adventure. So we support and finance. So for 2 years now, we've acquired some existing competencies with AFE and Banque des Dépôts et Consignations to help creators. How do we help? We come and finance, and we help entrepreneurs to structure their newborn companies. To sum it up, we give some financial means to creators with these associations as intermediaries so that their project can bloom, develop and bloom. So entrepreneurship for all. It does meet the title of our roundtable. At your left, Mathilde Torel, who is AIDS for Entrepreneurs program with Make Sense. A few words to introduce yourself. You're a partner of this forum, so thank you for this invitation. Really glad to be here with you. So Make Sense it's an international organization whose aim is to promote citizen commitment for both social and environmental causes, and to help companies with social and environmental commitment. So we have support programs coming from the concept of an idea for launching a company through the development all over the territory, and including the financing to support social entrepreneurs who want to scale up. So I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit longer, because the idea is to support you, support entrepreneurs, but we want to start with the testimonies of the entrepreneurs. So Mohamed Gnabali, you're a mayor from the city of Lille-Saint-Denis. So it's a testimony of yourself as an entrepreneur, but the honor to the ladies. Virginie Hills, thanks for joining us. So the founder of Comptoir de Campagne. So the first issue of this roundtable, how local territories and neighborhoods are an essential link to help entrepreneurship. So Comptoir de Campagne, you started from a statement. You've assessed. You're going to speak about the suburbs, We are speaking of the hinterland where there are no longer trades, but in the peripheries of large cities, it's also a problem, and it's more of a problem in the suburbs of large cities. So we're speaking of villages. It's the deep France where there is a need for services, and we're speaking of sleeping of dormitories or cities in Cantal, for instance, in the Auvergne region. There is sometimes a services offer in these areas, but there are several types of populations. We've got the original dwellers. We've seen many shops closing down, and it started in the 70s with the rural exodus, with the competition of large hypermarkets and supermarkets and with the online services, shops and public services and private services leave these areas in the suburbs. So the local populations have watched all those shops closing down and services closing down. But people go back to those suburbs and start again living there. Why? Because lockdown has amplified this movement, but a part of the population go to those suburbs because they can't afford anymore to live in the cities, or they only sleep in these cities, and there are no more social links. One city in two in France have no longer services to offer. When we speak of the suburbs, we see supermarkets and hypermarkets boom in the peripheries of our large cities, but there are no services. But talking about suburbs, we're speaking of we're speaking of natural park of Vexin of Gâtinais. We're not speaking of the near suburbs of Paris. We're speaking of the hinterland, green areas where the offer of services is scarce, and we suggest an offer with services like the post office, deliveries, and some bars when you can eat and drink, and small open spaces where you can cut your hair on Tuesday and see your banker on Wednesday. I've got a long-term memory. We knew on Thursday that the baker would come and the butchers on Saturday. So it's back in trend. Yes, economic vitality and what we value are local products, so that we're speaking of circular economy, and it helps handicraft and that small businesses come back to those areas. So you've launched this in Parisian area. You're around Lyon also. Yes, we were born in the great suburbs of Lyon. We now have 10 counters. We are now opening a franchise. And our aim is to develop a concept that we can pass on to other candidates. And we're opening next month in the Parisian area, in the great suburbs, because Île-de-France is a rather rural area, if you don't know, outside Paris. 40 to 50 kilometers away from Paris, so we want to bring some new services and to help social links to establish. So this local dimension, we've spoken with this crisis, we need to be very close from our producer, from our consumer. So social entrepreneurship is interesting. We support the creation of companies, and those companies will be a market for other companies on the same area. So you're going to tell us how you support and you are supported, but now we go on with another expert. He's the mayor of the city of L'Île-Saint-Denis, Mohamed Gnabali. So you've created a company, a of territories. Let me introduce myself very briefly, because I have several caps, several functions. So it's a rather complex. To be very clear, I'm the mayor of the city of L'Île-Saint-Denis since 2016. It's in the Seine-Saint-Denis department. It's transforming with very hard, very low social indexes. It's a rather atypical city. It's an island of 177 hectares, and we have mainly natural areas on this island in my city. So very close to Paris, actually. Locally, I'm the president of a local mission, so I'm very sensitized, aware of the jobs for the youth. I'm a vice-chairman of the mayors of France on the ecological transition. I am managing a cooperative of general interest, Nova Elia, with as member the city of Stains, the Plaine Commune, and the department, and we also work with the Parisian area. Companies, inhabitants, associations within this cooperative. So all these functions of mine, I define myself as a creator of goods. You have to find time to do all this. I've got a great staff, actually, great teams, and for me it's a self-fulfillment. I've grown up on this island of the city of L'Île-Saint-Denis. I think we've got some common points with Mathilde about local planning and the question of metropolization. So metropoles, they work all the same way. We've got inner town along three axes. We've got the headquarters in Le France. We're speaking of Paris. Then you've got the business quarter in La Défense, and then you have all the tech companies on Île-Saint-Denis. And the concentration of wealth is there. And there are great suburbs, using your vocabulary referred to, and workers, the labor force, going to Paris to find jobs. So for 20 years now on L'Île-Saint-Denis, and within my cooperative, our goals is try to find economic activities enabling the creation of value and value on the spot locally, creating jobs, but because we don't want to be a dormitory town, and we want to improve quality of life locally. So we work on the project of urban farms. We've got a farm called the Farm of the Possible. So we hire people, handicapped people, refugees, and through this urban farm project, and I am, and the mayor is speaking, is a question of territory. How do you, what budget to what cost for nature? We consider nature as an infrastructure. I don't want to develop further, but when we're speaking of urban planning, you've said it with very right words in your diagnosis. Can we create activities in areas which are not inner towns? I don't oppose inner towns and suburbs, but central areas, suburbs and great suburbs and rural areas, I guess there is a chain of value to build between those four areas. The issue is rather this one, how to distribute economic activities on those four areas and human contacts. This is what I want to share with you today. Do you think there is an awareness about this? In Paris, people work in the Défense neighborhood, and they live in the other part of Paris. So they say we need to highlight collective endeavors. And do you feel a change, the change coming? And we come back to the core of the issue. Yes, totally. To tell you a story, we have been carrying an ecological transition since 2001. So we were swimming against the tide at that time. So the competency of urban planning goes to the mayors, but ecological and energy transition, it was a task of the national state. And nowadays we work on shared responsibilities between the state, national state, and the cities. And most important is the notion of general interest. What I like to say is the real cultural revolution lies in what has happened over the last years, or who is entitled to decide about what general interest is or not. I'm the chairman of a cooperative, so you need to accept that the general interest, it doesn't belong to the mayor or to the city hall, but that it becomes a debate among the general public. It's genius. I totally agree. Our company ESIS, we have an ESS label, and our pride is when we gather around the table people from the region, the chairman from the natural parks, banks, the post office, the railway company. So when we can meet with these people and bring them around the table, we can bring public services back. We can revitalize an area. We can we work with the Total Group for service stations in rural areas. So how we can bring public players around the table? It's not simple. And the funding of those projects is also complex, but this is a strength of our concept, and it's really enthralling when we are successful. Well, I totally agree with her, and this is a second cultural approach, which I think is vital. With such an ambition, we've mostly worked top-down, and we understand that we need to do it otherwise, the other way around. We need to work from the down to the top, from the local to the global. So I totally share your point of view, and I used to say that cooperate is not natural. You learn how to cooperate. And since I have those two functions, there is many things at stake. We need to convince the elected officials and to convince the financial institutions. And there is a higher subject, which is time. We have mixed calendars, and we're not in phase, we're not aligned. And we need to manage the everyday urgency and both, and at the same time think on the longer term. This is a natural transition happening today because we are lacking resources. So so we count on people because we have no longer money. So when you don't have enough resources, you need to cooperate. It becomes a necessity. So we have to accept to work with people, their constraints and their realities. Frédéric Guibert, about what you've just heard and your vision of local territories. Well, I am totally aligned with what has been said when you speak of entrepreneurship. This vision, this bottom-up vision, you don't impose entrepreneurship. It emerges alone, locally, according to the region, depending on the opportunities at hand. So there is a notion of attraction. You cannot wait that for entrepreneurship. You need to wait for an entrepreneur to emerge and launch his or her startup, and then we help them.
And in this approach, there's the reflection about around the state, the public authorities, and in the end, we think, well, we are not going to wait for the response. We're going to do things ourselves. Well, it's not possible to plan the fact that, next Saturday, for instance, there will be 10 entrepreneurs. It's not like that. Things come up and then have to be supported, and it's about having the capacity of the different authorities, public authorities, local authorities, to support these kind of enterprises. And it's at this level that things will be done. It's also the outreach actor that has a role to play. But then it's also about simplifying, supporting, coaching, because in France, it's very red tape based system. So when there's, we need, the background is necessary for the creation of opportunities, and also the need to support these enterprises, because there's a risk related to the creation of enterprises. Hence, having people that will ask the right questions at the right time. Hence, the specificity of all these associations, this network that is made available. So that's what you do at BPI France, but also you have your say. Yes, indeed, the support concept, the concept of support is important, especially when it comes to innovation. But it makes sense for those of you who know us. We are present everywhere, but our incubator is very Parisian, because our territory is Paris. We receive thousands of requests from entrepreneurs per year who want to benefit from counsels, from advice, to have advice, resources, and so on. And then we make our expertise available to all these entrepreneurs who are going to benefit from our resources. And this is the first axis that will release all these resources. And the other aspect is what you said, namely and also the collaborations that you mentioned, namely how can we manage to have entrepreneur resources in collaboration with the territorial partners. So whether it is in the center of the downtown or in the suburbs, with associations who know the youth, who know the entrepreneurs, and we bring in our expertise, our network, but always the knowledge, the insight, and this collaboration is very important. So you work with the local actors. So because we've started to tackle the other element, namely the fact that territories are huge in relation with partnerships, and those listening to us behind, also those who are in the audience or those who are listening to us through the internet, online, don't hesitate to ask questions, because it's about funding, but not only. That's what we'll talk about now. Mathilde, did you want to proceed with what you offer to the entrepreneurs? And then I will speak with Frédéric and the others. Yes, we try to support the entrepreneurs in all the critical phases of the entrepreneurial creation. The first critical phase is I have an idea, I don't know how to implement it. So we have a Tour de France. We go to the different towns and cities in France to transfer the methodologies and hackathon basis. It's very similar to that. So with a little stone, so to speak, that will bring to the building, so to speak, in order to help these entrepreneurs on how to innovate in their areas. So again, we're not experts, but there are people who would tell us more about their ideas, and we are going to help them to enrich the solutions proposed. And when the decision's been made to create the company, the enterprise. Then we're going to enter the incubation stage. And then you're going to be supported up to the time when you've set your business model. And once this has been done, then BPI has funded you during your incubation. Then you will look for other funds to back your turnover, your sales. And that's what we call the risk capital, the big risks that you're going to take when you create your company. And I'm going to make things very simple, but as for the risk capital, what is it? Well, you're going to invest money in 10 companies, for instance, and you hope that at least one of them comes from Doctolib. So that's we don't. And anyway, we won't have to use any unicorns, as just like in the nation startup. But anyway, we hope that some of them will be strong enough and still there in the next few years. And anyway, the turnover will still be there, and the value will have been created. So this is the logics of the venture capital, and we can see that more and more we can see actors, especially more conventional senior actors from the venture capital who come up and position themselves on the impact subject. This can be due to their own beliefs or because they have to, given the EU regulations and so on. But also, like that's the case for Make Sense, incubators covering the support, the coaching part. And it's okay, to give in, to provide expertise. But if the company doesn't have sufficient funds, it's going to be difficult for this company to be actually created and to be sustained, to be made sustainable over time. So all this is applied, disseminated all over the territory. So this is the support you bring to the entrepreneurs. Yeah, that's what we've been doing. And 1 year ago, for instance, on the 16th of March, just before the lockdown, we've opened our Spot platform. This platform is a platform where we've decided to make available all the resources that Make Sense has decided to develop. And also a number of sponsors had a lot of time available and free time, and they've mobilized themselves to make themselves available and help those people who want to create a company, these entrepreneurs. And actually, it's to make tools to all the entrepreneurs who have a positive impact. And therefore, I imagine that what Mathilde's been saying backs what you're going to say, Frédéric. So, when it comes to tools rather than financings, before tackling to these different topics, I will explain why we support entrepreneurs. And well, first is because there are a number of studies that have been carried out online and so on and so forth. But actually, the success capacity of a company when it's created depends on whether it was coached or not. It very much depends on that. So, all along the maturation of the company, the enterprise being created, we're seeking for persons who are going to challenge the idea of the company. So the need is there. It's not an obligation, of course, because you can create a company without being supported and without being financed either. But clearly, well, usually we need money. Well, it depends on the business model. But anyway, you want to understand that clearly. Why supporting an enterprise, why supporting company and so on, funding and everything. That's what you explained, Mathilde, when it comes to incubation, seeking funds, and so on. There's a strategy, finance-related strategy, which is important, that has to be implemented. And this is an expertise that the coaches can contribute to, because they know the territory very well and they know the local context as well. So one of the stakes, one of the challenges is to let people know, because it's not only about not only is it about the know-how, but also to let others know. The people on the territory have to know two things: that entrepreneurship is done for them, that it's a possibility. Entrepreneurship is possible for everyone? Yes, absolutely. It's not a joke. I'm not kidding here. There are two obstacles, two barriers that we try to remove: the funds and the idea of entrepreneurship. And this is started with kids as young as 9 years old. They would become aware about that from this age. In such a way that they can start thinking about professions that they want to be, what they want to be later, and they don't. They can be employees, but they can be entrepreneurs as well. Indeed, there are figures saying that soon there will be a high number of self-employed people and company creators, entrepreneurs. Yes. Very recently, we switched from the image of the entrepreneur being a boss to the entrepreneur as a company creator. And to be an entrepreneur, you don't need to study at university for years and years. Anybody can become an entrepreneur, whether it is in suburbs, in the poorest areas, in rural areas. It's always possible to create a company. So this is the first thing that has to be clear in people's mind. And also in relation with the city's policy, with the areas in the city that have to be refurbished and supported. This let other people know this principle, this concept is important in these regions and in these areas, and therefore it's important also to know, to figure out who is going to be the right coach to support, to provide advice to those people who want to become entrepreneurs. That's what we call the Cité Lab, the poorest areas in towns, in cities, and we've been funding these Cité Lab, these blocks labs, if you will. You refer to people coming at a not rich level to let people become aware of the fact that they can become entrepreneur. So it's about becoming visible, letting them know the offer, the option, the possibility to be funded when they have an idea of a company creation in mind. And also they can be coached by advisors, by consultants. And also when it comes to finance, I'm not going to develop this for too long because it's not today's topic, but there are a number of systems available as for innovation. And this can be also used as in order to coach, in order to support these ideas of companies with a wide range of financing, microcredits, for instance, up to bigger budgets with the option to be in touch with what we call business angels and also what we call honor rewards. Honor loans. So it can be hundreds of thousands of euros, but also millions of euros. But mainly thousands of euros, not really millions of euros, rather. But in order, in order to have the companies created and so on and so forth, but still, the systems already exist with different in partnership with associations, and in order to define what is going to be the amount of this loan of honor. So Nathalie, you also speak to the citizens. How long do I have? 3 hours to answer your question? Yes, we started at a small scale. The first sponsor was BPI. And at some point, we could kick off the company after our idea was declined, some feelings of despair and so on. But then, BPI said, well, okay, we're going to help you. But, it's a matter of insisting, trying everything. Well, anyway, for this French tech, it was 25,000 euros, the first element that convinced the bank to support us as well. So it was great to have this mixture of financial support to start our first e-commerce website. And then with BPI, we also had finance when it comes to innovation, and first fund levy. And then there was a crowdfunding campaign on the alitap.co platform. And we had 3 campaigns on Litam. And the shareholders, the ITA shareholders, were the first investors. And then BPI leveraged on this first fund levy, and with La Poste, La Caisse d'Épargne, who contributed with a small amount of financial resource, but still, it was interesting because they showed that they were willing to collaborate with us. And then another fundraising with the Caisse des Dépôts, Groupama, Crédit Agricole, the Maïf, and so on. Well, many entities and capitals. For what reason? Well, possibly because it is about solidarity fund and so on and so forth. Because a social company doesn't always work well, and people may be reluctant at helping, at supporting financially these social companies, and they can see that they think that the ROI is not going to be huge, and yes, companies that have a woman CEO are more performing than others, possibly. Well, sometimes anyway, the investors would think of the profit. They will see a high risk, and then they will be reluctant. But I will explain, I will answer, well, even if the risk is lower in the paradigms, in the decision-making criteria, it doesn't match, because those who will approve things are financial people. But anyway, there are wills, good wills. But, we also always have to go through an assessment grid. But the explanation is the following. People want to take part to these things, to these projects, but with small budgets, small funds, in order to avoid any risks. But it's really about collaboration between the public, between the public sector, the private sector, the individuals, and so on and so forth. And normally, BPI will again send us another budget. So BPI is both financing, at least in Lyon, there are benevolent people. Yes, because it's not only about financing. There are people who would suggest us to use tools that we don't know already. So BPI helps us a lot. And now you give back what you were given, because you also created to create companies. Yes, in turn. Yes, that's why we were discussing with BPI, with the France Active, in order to figure out which systems we can build up jointly as for the future of these entrepreneurs to be. And in your view, what are the right tools? I will let you prepare your question, even if there are questions from those listening to us online.
I'm taking off my glasses because the issue is complex. For me, we need to speak about the entrepreneur's motivations. The mission of the company will define a lot of things concerning financing and I'd like to address this issue quoting the triple poverty, zero poverty, zero exclusion, zero carbon. So to become visible, to be included in this, integrated in this society, we want to exist. So to endeavor in order to exist. That's the first message I wanted to come across with. So a question of certain groups, a question of territories, a question of the nation, the country itself. And nowadays, a company like Nova Idea, its ambition is integration, can be summed up by the struggle against exclusion. I think that this kind of drive is not an index of the economic profitability of the company. About zero carbon, I'm going to translate that into today in a popular city like Lille Saint-Denis. I get simple. We work for the health of people and of the planet. This is how I see it. People want to live well, and the good plan to live well is to work not very far from home, to be able to have a cool life and enjoy it, and that's what people want. And some motivations are very simple. I want to be independent, to be free, and to have a good time. And the third issue, the issue of poverty, people want to earn money. I want to work in something that gives me money in return. So these are different realities, and with Nova Idea, we were born from a first movement founded 15 years ago in the city of Lille Saint-Denis, where I founded a company called Capital Banlieue with childhood friends. And our first drive was to become visible. It was really obvious. We were 25 years old, 20 years old actually. I'm 36 years old, so that you know. And it was really shocking. We had all higher education diplomas. I lived in New York City, in London. I went back to my neighborhood, and they just gave me back a message. Oh, it's really nice, this little young from the neighborhood. And I say it calmly, but there is a problem in France of prejudice. When we created Capital Banlieue, our idea was really simple. How do we emancipate populations? And entrepreneurship comes not very naturally. And our will was very clear. We wanted to autonomy, entrepreneurship. It goes through the economic liberation. So we went to see banks, and banks received us, and they said we can lend you 500 euros or 1,000 euros. So we wanted to go into ethnic food. We wanted to open such a restaurant because you went door to door. No, Ile Saint-Denis is a city of 8,000 inhabitants. There is only one school, so we know everybody. So we wanted to start the revolution. How do we carry a project, a source of jobs? So our first fundraising was among ourselves. Then the local authorities went along. When the young raised themselves, everybody goes along. So private companies, it was in a third wave of fundraising. So always worked in the city of Ile Saint-Denis, in the department of Seine-Saint-Denis. So Seine-Saint-Denis, there is a diversity, and I really regret that people live next to each other and not with each other. And we worked a lot on legitimacy and entitlement. So we were the rebels of this area. So we were in a cooperative, so one person, one vote. So at our board, everybody had the same weight. So it was innovative and it was strange. And when you say this to private companies. We went further. For 8 years, we said there would be no dividends. You come to us, you become, you get some equity, but you won't get any dividends for 8 years. So it brought another mindset, and I reacted to what you've said. You reduced resources to money. I think you should not make this mistake. We understood that our first resource was people. For our ethnic food or multicultural activity, over 1 year we've developed an economic activity with a turnover. So we sold mint, bissap, drinks, and the first resource to create a company are people. And afterwards, in a second step, what you need to understand in the question of entrepreneurship, it's accessible to all according to each one's objectives. And the objective that will help you model your company will be governance and everything. So, so much on this. Then I would say that entrepreneurship will develop locally depending on the local background. You can say everything, but territories are already specialized. Every geographical area is different. I speak with other mayors on ecology. I spoke to Thomas when arriving here. I don't know what about wind energy because I live in an urban area, and some mayors came to me and said we need to work on wind energy, but I don't know the first thing of wind energy on roofs perhaps. Naturally, we specialize according to the needs of our local area and what's missing, and solidarity. What will it bring more than a normal economy? We'll focus on the needs which are not met by the public authorities or the private companies already existing on the spot. So we're open to all. Entrepreneurship is open to all, and it's foremost a question of ambition and of projects and of goals. Do you want to react, Frédéric Guibert, on this question of this notion of resource? Yes, human resources will get to the financial resources. The sentence which you should always remember: a good project, a good endeavor will always find its funding. So it's basic. The human resources, it comes first. So there is a mic in the room that we want to interact. So still questions to ask, but it would be good the audience to react. Thank you to all. My question goes to Frédéric Guibert as an investor in funds, which is one of the main functions of BPI. Couldn't be influential on the orientation of public money to, as an investment fund, can you drive money to the achievement of the SDGs? We try, actually, and you need to. We do have an influence in funds. We can weigh in on. We can help them make decisions on climate. We're not in the planned economy, so it's up to the funds if they want to guide their funds in any given direction. So, that's what we were saying about venture capital. If we choose a target, we've got expectations about return on investment, risk-taking, so they can be blocked, hindered by design. So it's only on the long term. Those issues of climate and are growingly important. You've got family offices which are freer in their capacity of investing and are increasingly interested by taking these aspects into consideration. So I'm not saying we're going to revolutionize those investments, but it will happen in time, with time. So, but things are changing. We were talking about climate and the fact climate change is an opportunity for many things, among them entrepreneurship, but on the opposite side, you have many constraints, for instance, EU regulation on climate to force economy to go green through funding. So it's happening, but it will take time. Do you have any other remaining questions? Yes, Mathilde, please, to react on this. And to go global and come to local, we moderate a network of business angels within Make Sense. I started with Make Sense 6 years ago for business angels interested in impact actions, and now they are interested on an everyday basis. And business angels were philanthropists, and now they are rather investors, and not thinking about profit, high profit, but in the logic of entrepreneurial lever to become more sustainable. So it's in being structured, so the networks of business angels on impact. And it's coming naturally. They want to become more socially responsible. And it starts from themselves. So we have some funds carried by partners. The partners bring their own the money themselves, and they will impose some goals on impact. And we see individually business angels do change about their criteria for investing up to a point where impact becomes greenwashing for certain companies. We hear things that are hallucinating. Companies say they are green because their funds are. You need to be cautious, and funds need to be cautious because they say, oh, yes, this is profitable. It's more profitable. Actually, it's greenwashing, and they make mistakes because they're afraid of companies that are less profitable, and they have the feeling they invest into impactful companies, but it's not the case. So we need to be cautious on this. Not all companies do reporting, so impact measurements is becoming systematic, should become systematic to be sure that we're not following just a trendy direction. Any other question? I do have another question. Yes, it can happen this way. The experts around the table can make questions. So I have a controversial issue for years. We've been working with Pôle emploi, the unemployment agency in France, in the Parisian area to help long-term unemployed and guide them towards entrepreneurship. The conversion rate is not very high. We are only helping them getting skills, but to get another job, actually. But we have a huge debate with local with Revel, Get Up, local associations who work very hard with the young unemployed. And they say, makes sense, you're very nice, but the entrepreneurship for all, when the people on the ground have difficulties to make ends meet, and you want them to carry the weight of environmental issues, you're very nice, but it's not the priority for those people. When I hear entrepreneurship for all, I want to believe in it, but there are some concrete realities that are stronger. What you see in your every day, is it an illusion, or we've got the same debates locally? I totally agree with what you've just said. I come back to what to motivation, to drive. My personal example: we created, we were for creating this company. We needed to go. We were still employed. We created our company, but we needed to bring some money. I'm very clear on these issues. Social and local inequalities exist. It's really concrete and clear. It's unambiguous. And afterwards, local players, how do they work together? We try to mitigate the inequalities and the lack of balance, so everybody can do what he wants to do or she wants to do. This is our local ambitions I speak as a president of a local mission. So this new generation wants things immediately, results immediately, and this creates difficulties when speaking of entrepreneurship, which takes time. And that's what I tell young people when they want to open a company. You've got a lot of entrepreneurs. It's an invisible mass, but it took them time to build up the company, grow, and blossom. It's like a project for the whole society, or for step by step, phase by phase. But unfortunately today, there is this concept of startup nation by the President of the Republic, how to become an entrepreneur in 18 months. And as if I could be successful in 18 months and go to LA and make a new life. So there is the first issue, which is convergence of our tools to support this young, and we have not a good perspective on this. I'm not sure that the mission of Make Sense for the unemployed is to guide them to open a company within the same year. But do they have the competencies to do it, and if it improves their self-esteem and help them in their personal project, it's already a victory. And unfortunately, it's not a positive exit for your investor.
And this is what we want to deep dive in. Example, we've built an urban farm with climate structures, environmental friendly structures, and raw material with a huge fundraising. And some people said, well, this is not relevant. But this is a territory-related project, so it's going to be about the territorial impact, really. So the difficulty that we now have is that we're going to keep working in silos, and it's normal because there are public policies operating in silos. And as long as we don't have things, as long as there are funders who answer, well, that's fine, but we didn't create that. But the debate can keep going on. Very personally, I think that not creating a company is not a failure. It's not. It's rather someone not fostering an entrepreneur to create a company, which is a failure. However, we have to be careful with not being confused between entrepreneurship and startup nation, because national startup. There was a figure mentioned, namely 800,000 startups, and that's fine. But the entrepreneurs are people who would create their own job, their own employment, and it can be of any forms, of any kind of areas. And one of the barriers for entrepreneurs is that they think that they have to have the greatest idea of the century. And when we look at the startup nation, because I worked in innovation before, I can say that even those who are relaxed worked hard, and they're still working hard. And then, it's a matter of balance between funds and many other things. So, entrepreneurship, especially in the territories, is not always the startup itself. There's enterprises and startup. It's not the same. So third part of this session, when you want to become an entrepreneur, you want to know what's taking place elsewhere, and you would ask yourselves about the model roles, and you would get inspired by others in order to create a company. And I can hear that you're starting to become moderate with regards to these model roles. So Mohamed, I'm very in favor to the model roles. In Seine-Saint-Denis, we've heard a lot of things in Seine-Saint-Denis, and there are many things taking place in Seine-Saint-Denis with enterprises that happen to provide remuneration to many families. And everyone has its role to play. So it's more about advocating cooperative and what kind of society projects we want to give to our youth, to the people, for them to have projects related to the territories, instead of waiting for a solution from someone who's going to come up and explain to you a specific recipe to make your life successful. So I'm going to ask you a question, namely, is an entrepreneur from the poorest areas different from the other entrepreneurs? Well, I'm going to say that to reword this, I will say that each person would grow and would build himself or herself through their own experiences and their own territories. Now, behind this concept of suburb capital, there's something special, namely to make do with anything, the D system, so to speak. In Seine-Saint-Denis, for a long time, we haven't waited for the state for a long time. We've started doing things ourselves, even though each territory has its own specificity, its own needs. The question is, are we going to create specific systems for the entrepreneurs of the poorest areas? Yes, but I think it's rather related to social matters, to society matters. It's systemic that we have to dig further rather than starting from looking at the entrepreneurs as people from the poorest areas or farmers of very rural areas or whatever. As for this question, can everyone become an entrepreneur? I agree on what was said, because not all the conditions are existing. It's not always easy. Now, what about everyone? Of course, can become an entrepreneur. It's a mindset in an association, in a company, to develop a new project, for instance, that goes in the vein of the SDGs, for instance. All the people in the collectivity who have a project in mind to support people, to coach people. It's not necessarily in relation with the creation of a company. Everyone can create a project that goes in the direction of the environmental matters and so on. If I'm here, though, is because when I started, there are people who inspired me. And then I think that my duty today at the Comptoir de Campagne is such that I can testify that it is possible. Because this is a project that made me become an entrepreneur. And it came up to me, in a very unexpected way. And if I become an entrepreneur, it's because I have a very benevolent, very good environment around me, who believed in me with incubators and who gave me the will to believe in it. So inspiring models is very important as well, because then you'll be willing to believe it and to believe in it in yourself. And I will say the following thing: if I've managed to do it, if I've if I was successful in it, if I'm successful in becoming an entrepreneur, then anybody can be so. Mathilde and Frédéric afterwards. Yes, I agree with all the things that have been said. I wanted to bounce back on what Ahmed said earlier. There's a specificity for all the territories, and therefore not all the entrepreneurs are the same. But the matters related to urban, the suburbs and so on, rural areas. But when you come from the highest business schools, where your teachers and professors are the highest businessmen, it's a bit different from, learning from the ground. And that makes sense. We are lucky to have finance people who would support us to have this entrepreneurship mind to start doing things in view to creating your enterprise. Also, my idea is to have entrepreneurs coming from the Ile de Seine-Saint-Denis and to give courses. So they can also give courses to the highest business school in French. This would be interesting as well, because it would be different. Their website, for instance, is very simple, but still, they would do door to door, and they are very useful in training the conventional incubators. And I'd say that these two cultures, these two businessmen cultures, these two kinds of entrepreneurs, is very, very useful. Indeed, we have to go beyond the cliches. For instance, you're entrepreneur in Ile Seine-Saint-Denis, or an entrepreneur who graduated from HEC, one of the highest business school in France. I think that it would be very good and very motivating for someone who, for instance, has in mind the creation of a company who doesn't look glamorous at all, and in the end, has a lot of know-how from which the many businessmen who graduated from HEC can learn from. And also, that's thanks to this complementarity, we can have companies that can be more resilient. Maybe it will be different from a startup nation, but anyway, it won't delocalize overseas, abroad. Well, I have a mixed point of view when it comes to this. When it comes to this role model, I strongly believe that we need this, and at some point, I think that people need to identify themselves. And when we take into account people from the poorest areas in the suburbs in France, it's because we want to increase the cohort of creators from this public in order to get diversity. This is why I have mixed feelings here. That's why I think that we have to be very careful with these shining things, the example is not only the guy who makes a lot of money. It's not necessarily this guy that has to be the most visible, although at the same time there's a true need to manage for many more women to become entrepreneurs as well, because there are 30% of entrepreneurs who are women, although there are many more women than men in France, in the population in France. So it should be the same when it comes to entrepreneurs. And we need this role model. And when it comes to the products dedicated to the poorest areas, I agree on the fact that there shouldn't be products specific to the poorest areas, because otherwise this would be some kind of discrimination. But we didn't try to design new products, new financing products, but rather systems available at the level of the interface in order to simplify the support, the capacity to have access to a common right. And that's what we would do with women, that's what we would do with the youth, because we think that these populations are a priority when it comes to support for entrepreneurship. Any questions from people online? A question from the live stream. Someone asking to clarify the model role. What is a model role? So what is it? It's showing an entrepreneur. Indeed, a role model. A model role is this. What you said. You know, it's someone who's inspiring. In province, I experienced the creation, the emergence of a startup, but this is also related to fundraising. For a long time, 500,000 fundraising, 500,000 euros fundraising was seen as something impossible, but now it's not anymore. And this is the model role, you know, to be in the capacity to convince many people that it's possible, things are possible for them as well. But we have to weigh this with the fact, with the realistic fact that it's not always easy. And indeed, being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. I was wondering the same question in my mind, you know. We all agree on that. It's when it comes to the understanding of the word model role. As far as transmission, inspiring is concerned, I fully agree on that. We need this model role. Now, what also is important when it comes to the message to pass through, I was born in 1985 and I saw on our territories inspiring models, what were inspiring models at the time, namely the economic success. And I now rejecting all these models because we are normal people. We just want to live well on a territory with people we like, and so on, and so on, and so on and so forth. And there are many messages I would receive from young people from my territory, and I don't want to say you can do like me, you can do as I did. I want rather to say, well, everyone can do it. That's the message I want to give. And also we can give messages, we can give advice, we can give expertise, experience as for what we went through and what we experienced, all the things that we had to go through. And I think that this is the key message. Last thing that is very important to me is that rather we should ask people, help people asking themselves what is actually their motivation for creating a company. For instance, what do you expect from life and so on and so forth. And I think that's what we want to tell our young people so they can understand the sense of their action, for them to ask themselves the right questions related to the sense, because often in the territories it's not about the sense, it's rather about urgency, and that's what I want to reject. And I won't generalize. Another question from the live stream.
Yes, I wanted to. The question comes from Niger, from Niamey, the capital city. Someone following us since Brazzaville. The model of African economies, the Republic of Congo, is built around that. So, do you think it's adapted to entrepreneurship? At least, welcome to our African friends. It's good to be followed from so far away. Do you have any solution to this indebtment issue? Everybody's looking at me. You're the bank. International funding is difficult. The economy of the debt, what it means, I think the principle to make a loan in order to open a company, it's the case in France too. All depends on what you intend when you say opening a company, but you may need to create a debt and make a loan independently from the size of your company. So it's necessary at a given step. If you can create value from your own resources, but nowadays it's rarely the case. It's almost never the case. That's it. Could you give some details on for the entrepreneurs who are following us? What do you call a loan? You should not make a loan in your name, but instead in the name of your company. So be careful. We are lucky to have like BPI with bringing the collateral from a bank. So bankers, they want a personal contribution. So don't be careful. Avoid this trick. We've got some organism that avoid you to make a loan with your the personal collateral. So in order to clarify fundraising, when you raise 1 million, 10 million, does it come from an investment fund? Where I said 10 million because it's nice, but half of it, or almost half of it, is a debt towards a bank. So 10 million is nice, but there is always a loan involved when you open a company. I'm going to add something. As a mayor, there are several questions in this question. To make a loan, why? What for? When you make a loan in France, it's for a political project, social security for all, or public service that is strong. So the question of taking up a loan is what project do you want for the life of your population, of your territory? So I can be inflexible. So sobriety. I manage a city of 8,000 inhabitants with a budget of 12 million euros. So I'm not as flexible, and I'm in a developing city and need to attract investment. So I carry a humanistic project with a strong public service, but with the constraints and the limitations of a city. Île-Saint-Denis, we are economically poor, but humanly rich. So we need to go beyond this question of a financial loan. We should use other means. The 000 means that is how can we think differently? What do you mean by resources? What do you mean by needs? And they are interconnected. Sometimes it's circular. So we need to think beyond this question. What I see is how do you develop when you have a loan to pay back, or when you don't have money at all. In the Seine-Saint-Denis department, this culture and these topics that come forward when you don't have money. But if we stay at this step, it's complicated. The question of loans, we cannot make loans. We've got some indebtedness ratios that we can. So when you have a project in mind, you need to think differently and find economic model which are hybrid with this blend of public-private funding, with these human resources in mind, and cooperation as a new added value, a new approach on wealth, to reach something which is still difficult to assess. So 1 + 1 equals 3, but there is something that enables us in this to go forward. This is what is at stake for our companies. How to not make so many loans on our planet. We consume more resources nowadays than the planet can afford, can give us. So we are indebted economically and environmentally. It can no longer go this way. We need to rethink and optimistic. I think we can do balanced development otherwise, while remaining ambitious. And people prefer to remain pessimistic and to tell you it's the end of the world. So Africa has a contribution to make, as many other countries, and France needs to face other issues. France is too ambitious. It's a great nation, but it's huge. It doesn't have the means of its ambition. So it needs to go and carry on its culture and its tradition to place brotherhood in the middle of its society model, but without being able to afford it. So about local governments, I was speaking a few days ago. Mr. Mayor, they wanted me to create a city police because national police cannot handle everything. You don't have enough means, so you want me to create a city police. She didn't reply anything. She said, should I do at the end of the day, the country's resources are not unlimited. We need to find another solution. So this is what we need to think about. A competency. Should we bring resources on our own, and how can we? We've spoken about a lot of other issues and then what that was planned. So we're reaching the end of this debate. So last roundtable. Mohamed, you've already spoken a lot. So the access to entrepreneurship. Virginie, what would you say as a conclusion? That's what I've already said. An endeavor can take many forms. You only need to believe in it. So the background, don't put you at risk if you want to open a company or a project. How much time do I need? How much money do I need? And you need to be able to take a step back and stop. When we speak about debt, don't make a personal loan. Make a loan as a company, but it's possible. Entrepreneurship is possible. We are lucky in France to have incubators. So go see incubating companies. So when you talk to incubators and to funders, if you can't convince them, it means two things. Either the project is not mature enough or it's not good. So we're really lucky in France to have some venues or places where you can test an idea and a project. If the incubators want to go along, then go for it and give yourself a limit in time and in money. Mathilde, what really drove me to come here and speak about entrepreneurship for all is, once again, something we talk a lot with makes sense. Does the audience only come from Paris? No, people are coming from other areas of France. So the mentality is evolving, even if makes sense is it really was is settled in Paris. We see female and male entrepreneurs, but when we see the same profile of entrepreneurs, we also see the same series of solutions, because if the entrepreneurs are the same, they will think of only the same solutions. And entrepreneurship for all is interesting because it needs time to open up partnerships and to go outside Paris and find other solutions with local partners. So we discover other profiles on the ground, and by diversifying those profiles of entrepreneurs, we can enrich ourselves. And this is what drives me in this concept of startup nations brought up by the French president. it would mean that we apply the same methods every time with a single model. The issue is we won't be able to address also socio-environmental issues if we don't diversify profiles and mindsets or methodologies. I totally agree with what has just been said. This idea of driving force and bottom up are vital. Ideas can come from the local ground and people who are in contact. When we speak of Startup Nation, the people who have been successful started from the local area. About personal indebtedness and making it on a personal loan. So you do need to be cautious, and you need to get approved about the amount of the loan, but it's a complement to a project. So to make a personal, I have a loan on my name. Don't worry. But you should not. This is essential. Don't contract a personal loan with physical collateral, because you risk losing everything in order to open a company. That's why you need support and in the choice of the kind of company you want to open, and help people supporting you, helping you define your business plan. Because at the end of the day, you need to keep in the corner of your mind that you may not be successful in your endeavor. Last word, just to come back to Comptoir de Campagne, my own project. If people want to create a multi-service trade within the Parisian area, please come and visit us. We're looking for people to open shops, and we're here to help them. The last word that I take from Mohamed, tomorrow's company will be social and will be local, assuming Mohamed's words. So thank you to all four. Frédéric Guibert from BPI France, Virginie Inns with Comptoir de Campagne. We can find your contact easily. Mohamed Nabali, mayor of the city of Île-Saint-Denis, and Mathilde Torel from Make Sense. Thank you all who followed us here in the room or online. Thank you to be part of this Forum 000, and a nice evening to you all.